You may be familiar with the term food desert. It's a term that was devised in the 1970s and it's been used somewhat frequently, even by the government, but also culturally, to describe areas, specifically the United States, that are either inaccessible in terms of how far supermarkets are and how easy it is to get to them, or supermarkets themselves, or rather grocery stores, that is, stores that lack nutritious food choices. And you can debate about this because obviously there are always better choices, for example, than others. So a tin of sardines is probably a better choice than a bag of potato chips. But nonetheless, it is a thing that people use. They talk about food deserts, which are either geographically limited or in terms of the availability of the foods that they can eat are limited in this respect. And I think there's something to it, although probably not as much as people say, but it's difficult to say one way or another. But what I want to talk about today is effectively an analogous phenomenon, that being what I refer to as the mating and dating desert. And I see a lot of analogies here because much like with food deserts, you still end up getting food sometimes, but the food isn't very nutritious, or sometimes you actually can't eat it all. It really, really depends. So here's the thing. Why am I talking about a mating and dating desert? Well, I'm talking about observations I've made over the years, the current meta, if you will, in terms of dating and mating, as well as the interactions that I've observed with people and the things that they tell me. So let's start with women, and then we'll talk about men. So in the woman dating meta, there is at the very least the perception that there is a desert. And in some sense, it is a real thing, which is to say, if you're actually being driven by hypergamous instincts, it is unlikely that you're going to view a large chunk of the male population as a suitable dating and mating choice. So it's always a matter of perspective. Do I think that the degree to which women ignore huge swaths of the male population because their expectations are astronomically high, do I think it's a good thing? No, I don't. Do I think it's useful? No. Do I think that a lot of women are shooting themselves in the foot by doing so? Yes, I do. But within the female context, let's say you were to transpose yourself into a female, what would happen? Well, you would observe there's a mating dating desert of quote-unquote eligible men because of the way female reproductive strategies work. There simply aren't enough men in the highest echelons for all women to go around. And this is, of course, exacerbated by the internet. More on that later. But in their case, it very much is a real thing. At least they perceive it to be. And it really depends on the perspective you're coming from. But we've known this for a long time. What I find a lot more interesting, frankly, is the male perspective in the context of the mating and dating desert. And one thing I've noticed is what one might term a new form of settling. And that is this phenomenon I observe in guys who are in their late 20s, throughout their 30s, and their 40s when I talk to them, where they say, look, there just isn't a lot of choice. If I want to date, I'm going to have to date a single mother. So the phenomenon of single motherhood is so ubiquitous and occurs so frequently that many of these guys have resigned themselves to what is effectively a mating and dating desert by saying, look, that's just the way it is now. That's the situation we live in. And so this is what we have available. And if I want to date, if I want to get access to sex, this is what I'm going to have to engage with, so I'll just engage with it. Now, of course, it's no mystery, if you've been in the manosphere, that single mothers typically are red flags. You would ideally want to avoid them. But in many of these cases, these guys I talk to, they say it's not possible. It's basically in large urban centers, speaking of geographical areas with respect to the food desert, now in terms of the dating desert, it might as well be after a certain age a coin flip. Maybe you get a single mother, maybe you don't. And so you see men just resigning themselves to a situation where that's all there is. Well, I'll just deal with that. And there has been a shift, to get back to the female perspective, in what men have been willing to settle for, not just in terms of whether or not the woman in question is a single mother, but also in terms of punching way below their belt. Now, men are not hypergamous by nature, of course, but in general, there's a principle called the sword of mating where like draws like. But if you look at some of the trends, at least online, you see a lot of the guys dating way, way down to what their level in the meta ideally should be or would be under normal circumstances. That has changed tremendously. So a lot of these guys just say, look, it's just not worth the hassle. If I want to get something, anything, I'm going to have to date way, way down. So if you're a 7 as a guy, you might have to content yourself with a 4 or a 3. And anecdotal though it might be, there's a lot of visual proof of this. And this is a form of a dating desert. You take what you can get. If you live in an urban center where the local grocery store only has canned goods, that's your best option. Maybe that's the very best you can get instead of fresh produce. That's what you're going to get. In some cases, you're going to eat the nasty potato chips that you ideally shouldn't be eating at all. Likewise, in the case of mating, you're going to say, look, I can't get anything else, so I might as well just settle for this. Now, I've even seen one case, which I'm by no means claiming is universal, where the guy reasoned that dating a single mother is actually a good strategy because she might be willing to lower her standards to be together with you, and she might be reasonably attractive, right? Which is to say, because in general, single mothers are not the best dating targets, despite a lot of guys resigning themselves to dating them, you get the odd situation indeed where the guy says, well, she already has offspring, so maybe you should be less picky and less choosy. I'm not sure if that's a good strategy, but I do know a guy who has made that a point and has absolutely no problem for that reason dating single mothers. And it's a bit strange, but it goes to show these different levels of modern adaptations that have taken place in the current dating meta. And a lot of this, unfortunately, has created veritable mating and dating deserts where general principles of a sort of mating don't work anymore, with like drawing like. But there are exceptions, and specifically, there is one exception. There's one class of human beings in the modern American context that seems to either be largely immune to the mating, dating, desert phenomenon, or is simply unaware of it, and that is the class of super educated, reasonably well-off people. When I say super educated, I'm talking about PhDs, people who are doing PhDs in biochemistry and engineering, this sort of thing. When you look at the stats, you see these people tend to have fewer problems finding relationships, and they tend to stay in relationships, which is to say they divorce at lower rates. Or better put, women hand in the divorce papers much less frequently in this class of people. But let's be honest, not many people have PhDs, not many people are incredibly well educated, and not many people have those levels of income. And so as a result, you get huge swaths of the population effectively cut out of the functional mating and dating game, and they find themselves in a mating and dating desert. There is another exception, however, and this is a trickier one. A lot of the mating and dating phenomenon can be attributed to the internet, not exclusively, but a lot of it can be. People that have grown up or spent most of their time online tend to lose their grip on reality. If all they do is spend time online, they're not going to be able to form normal human relationships in general, certainly not normal romantic ones. And this is purely anecdotal, but in my observation, the people who spend the least time online are the normies, the normie types that aren't even that exceptional, that have normal relationships, that get together in an organic way. Where it seems to have really gone south is with people who have spent a lot of time online in the mating and dating market and who use it primarily as a means of either finding copulation or mates or dates or take your pick. So there's a slight caveat to this concept of the mating and dating desert, because the people that manage to avoid spending too much time online typically are more successful on average. They don't find amazing people, but they find people within their category. Now, of course, a lot of this stuff started decades ago and had to do with politics and changes in political structures, economic structures, as well as the cultural level. But the internet has really accelerated that. And so when people ask me, what is the best thing they can do as an average person, male or female, or finding quote unquote romantic partnerships, is get offline. The internet has completely warped our reality. I've talked about this before. I've talked about hyper-reality, but it really is true. The people that are successful that I can observe are the people that spend the least time online. If, however, you're already integrated into the online landscape, yes, the mating and dating desert thing is real, it's observable, and it's very, very difficult to escape unless you fit into that very, very rare category of super supremely educated as well as having decent enough income. That combination, those two specifically, are important. Not just the income thing, but the educational thing as well. As always, thanks for tuning in. Please hit the like button if you've not yet done so. Hit the subscribe button if you've not yet done so. Hit the bell icon to be informed of forthcoming videos. Please share the video. And as always, if I'm still alive and functional, I'll check you out later. And may the gods watch over you. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.